Okay, I have 5 p.m. on the nose. So we are going to begin. We will come back and check on the roll call before we end. If individuals come on, and Savitra, if you see them come on as far as a participant list, please, when we take our first pause, if you want to, we can update at that point. Okay. Again, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our second solid waste work group session. For those viewing this evening, I'm Stacy Rogers, Baltimore County Administrative Officer and the chair of the Solid Waste Work Group. On behalf of the County Executive, we extend greetings to our work group members and thank you for joining us again for our second session. And we also welcome the members of the public who are viewing our work group session this evening. Before we begin, I would like to share a few housekeeping items regarding our meeting. This work group session is being recorded. Materials shared this evening will be shared via email with our work group members. Work group members, you will receive the PowerPoint from tonight, just as we did last week. We will forward it to you. It will be coming from Jennifer Porter, our project manager from GBB. That's a slight shift. I know you're used to getting things from Leslie, but Ms. Porter will send slide decks and after meeting documents that we can share immediately after the meeting. The WebEx chat feature should be used this evening, as we did at our last meeting, to post any comments or questions. That way we are able to gather this information and we're able to feed it back with responses, particularly if we do not get to all questions during the work group session. We will monitor the chat box throughout the meeting, and we will indeed seek to answer those questions that we can during the session. We will have breaks throughout the session this evening for discussion and questions. For work group members who are on camera, if you would like to raise your hands to be recognized to offer a comment or a question, please feel free to do so. We will be monitoring that, or you can use the raise hand function as a part of the WebEx function. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for your feedback, those who provided feedback on the materials that were forwarded from our November 19th meeting. And as a result of your feedback, there are a few items that I do want to start with because several people asked or made comment and reference to in the response. One of the things is I want to revisit our goal as a work group. And if you have the opportunity, if you will go back to your appointment letters, it is reflected there as well. Our goal is to review our current state of operations in terms of solid waste management. We are going to examine national best practices, innovative technologies in waste reduction, diversion, disposal, and outreach efforts. And we're looking to identify opportunities for improved performance, increased waste diversion and reduction, and ways to have a stable, long-term operation here in the county in terms of our solid waste management. As a work group, we will develop recommendations for the county executive to consider. Upon the final review and approval, recommendations will be included in our 5-year solid waste plan to help guide the county as we move forward in our solid waste management efforts. Our discussions together are the initial steps to recommendation development. By no means are we ready to make recommendations at this point in the juncture. We have not reviewed all of the information that is available to us. Our work group sessions are designed to introduce new information, determine what things might be viable here in the county. We will have a session addressing innovations in financing. I have spoken with the county executive, definitely for the financing discussion. He is going to work to join us for that session. Tonight, we are going to discuss the process by which we will go through a recommendation formation and prioritization of recommendations when we're ready to do that. I want to acknowledge the great, insightful information that everyone sent in who responded. But I do want to say that some of our work will probably have to be divided out into some sub work group activities that we will bring back to the full body, because there are many discussions and pieces that we are going to have to discuss to be prepared for the recommendation process. But again, I want to reiterate, and it will be articulated a little further today in our decision-making and recommendation prioritization process that the GBB team is going to present. I also want you to know that if there are questions after this evening, we have developed a county email address that you may send questions to. This county email address is going to be monitored by staff here in the county, and all documents coming in will indeed be shared and discussed with the GBB and the authority as we plan and bring things back to you as our work group colleagues. I also want to acknowledge Lois. Thank you for your wonderful white paper, food waste and food recovery that you sent in. We are going to make that document available to all work group members. We will send it out as a part of the package this evening after the documents that will come out after this evening's meeting. We will send this document out. It is another way for you to have additional information. This is a report that the Baltimore County Advisory Commission on Environmental Quality put together. So I will stop there, but I do want to share a slide with you that I shared with county operations in March of 2020. When we were faced with how were we going to address the pandemic, all of the unknowns. Here in the county, we are definitely managing a pandemic. We have to do our day-to-day work and run the government. Likewise, in this experience, we have to keep running the solid waste operation as we have our discussion, and our solid waste plan by no means is only for a snapshot of 5 years. There may be things in our plan that will extend beyond that, but it's going to be our roadmap while we're managing solid waste and the path forward. So we're building it as we're going, but your input and where we land on recommendations, regardless of what recommendations exist now in the 10-year plan and recommendations that have come forward through observations from GBB, they are a part of the input. But I just hope that you will bear with us and not jump to or be concerned that this is already decided, because it's not. And I say that emphatically, it was in our notes from our last meeting, but I want to say that publicly, your input will guide us and help us to get to our recommendations. Thank you, Savitra. So I will take, like I said, I'll stop there and I'm going to turn the meeting over to our project manager, Jennifer Porter, who will talk about our evening's agenda and move us through the various components of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. I think I just need to get sharing ability on the PowerPoint, and then you want to check
Savitra, can you transfer sharing ability to Jennifer, please? And while we're doing that transfer, I did see a few people come in. I think I saw Kara. Did Mr. Robinson join us?
Yes, so I have Mr. Robinson who has joined, Mr. Patoka, Mr. Lafferty, Mr. Benjamin. You just mentioned Kara. Did Mr. Adams join?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sarah and Lois, did they join?
I'm here. This is Sarah.
Okay. Thank you very much. And Ms. Jacobs? Okay. Well, we'll proceed and we'll check to see if Lois joins us a little later. Thank you very much. And Jennifer, turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Stacy, and welcome everybody to meeting number 2. This is really exciting, and what I'm sharing right now is the agenda page, which was sent by Leslie prior to the meeting. I am going to use the PowerPoint as the full agenda tonight, so I'm going to switch from this. The only thing I was going to note here was, I hear a little feedback, the meeting number 1 notes. Stacy, did you want to ask, should we ask now about any comments on the notes for meeting number 1?
All right, before I do that, we're getting a little bit of feedback. So what I would kindly ask everyone, if you would mute until you are going to speak, that might reduce the feedback. So say it one more time, Jennifer.
Meeting number 1 notes. Did we want to ask for any comments on the notes that we sent from the first meeting?
Yes, are there additional notes? Comments that need to come in. We received feedback from several, very, very thoughtful feedback from several work group members, but are there additional notes to come in that you all plan to send in? Or if there are any high level comments that work group members would like to make at this time? This was on the briefing document.
Yeah,
this was on the meeting
notes. Yeah, the meeting notes.
Yeah, the meeting notes.
Right. Anybody, just the meeting notes for meeting number 1. If there's no comments, because what will happen is we will post notes for the work group, right?
Correct.
Right.
We just want to make sure that what was reflected for each of you was accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's Lois. Ms. Jacobs is on, Savitra.
Okay.
Okay, I don't see anything in chat and I don't see any hands.
Okay.
Last call for meeting comments on the meeting notes. Okay, I don't see any, Jennifer, so I think.
Okay, great. Okay, we'll move on. So I'm going to now bring up the slideshow here. Let me just go to here.
And you can, when you get to the plane, you can move on since we did that one already.
Yeah, we'll move on. It'll be there for the PDF that goes out.
Exactly.
At the end, right? So we are focusing tonight on a topic area of system strengths and weaknesses. And thank you again, everybody, for coming here for meeting number 2. I'm presenting tonight with 3 colleagues from the GBB team. So myself, project manager, Steve Simmons, GBB president, Harvey Gershman, a founding owner associate, and Sam Lybrand, our special principal associate. Harvey and Sam presented last week as well, so we're happy to be here. We have our plane, and Stacy had covered the charge from the county executive to the work group, covering our goals and our outputs. So this is for reference again from the letter that she had mentioned. And I would just say on the outputs of the group that we are also looking at prioritization for short, medium, and long term on the recommendations as we move through. So what we're going to cover for the rest of the meeting, really, and as Stacy said, we have pause points built in here, so we can pause for comments in the slides. But if you have an issue, please do let us know. We have these items coming up. So our inputs, we have a goals discussion, the prioritization path ahead, the actual topic of the strengths and weaknesses, and then an update on the online digital survey. So the inputs to inform decision making, as Stacy noted, we are building from these spheres that you can see on the slide. So the solid waste management plan, which was part of the documentation also in the background memo, which everyone reviewed. The GBB team recommendations, which you see in draft form in the background memo as well, and will also be presented as we move through the presentations in this work group. The work group presentations and discussions, this is a key part of what we're putting into this bucket for decision making. And then the resident and business public survey, also really important as we are building, and you can see the funnel shape to the tactical 5-year plan. I would say what we've acknowledged as a group so far too is that some of the recommendations, when I just mentioned the short, medium, and long term, may extend beyond the 5 years, and that's part of what we are going to be moving through as a group as well. But our charge is specific to a tactical 5-year plan. So in terms of goals, we wanted to bring up the sort of context at the national level, at the state level, and at the county level. So we have here the EPA recycling target of 50% by 2030 for nationally. Just as a frame of reference, the state of Maryland goal of 40% by 2030, and then the Baltimore county goal of 45%, which has been met since 2015. And, you know, when we look back at what this group was charged with, we did not have a specific numeric goal, and we wanted to, you know, we had more kind of comments around having a world-class system and a system that was, you know, equitable, and the comments from the county executive, but not a specific number. So we wanted to bring up this discussion of goals in light of both federal, state, and then the current goals from the county, to have this discussion with the members of the work group in terms of what are you thinking about goals. And with that, we're going to have our first pause point to kind of reflect on both, you know, the charge from the county executive and sort of the context of national state goals. We obviously know some of the goals from Montgomery County, Baltimore City recently adopted different goal frameworks. So we're interested to hear from the group at this point.
Don't
Jennifer,
all
maybe
speak at one time.
So maybe you said this and I missed it. What's our current rate of diversion?
Yeah, we've met the 45% since 2015. We're just above 45%.
Now, so that includes recyclables, right?
Yes.
And so to use information that Mike Bichler had shared with me before, this always measures what comes in, not necessarily what is actually recyclable. Is that right?
Yeah, that's true.
Same with the yard material. So the yard waste material that comes in is not, actually, it's not fully reutilized. So it comes in as a certain tonnage or volume, but we're really not utilizing all of that or diverting all of that, because part of that does go into the landfills. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
So the diversion numbers are probably not accurate.
Mr. Beechler, would you like to comment as well?
I'll give you the numbers right off and describe them. So Maryland has, and this is commercial and recycle, what they call the Maryland Recycling Act numbers, which are computed per a political formula. And I use political because it went through the legislature. And our MRA number per Maryland Department of the Environment is 38%. And that's commercial and residential. Now, when you look at what we do, curbside residential collection, 18% of our total material set out is recycled. So really, excuse me, only 18% of what is put on the curb is recycling. Now, when we go to process that and market that, only 9.6% actually goes to market or for a use as a recycled material. So the question is, what, there's all these goals, which again, and I'll say are political or policy goals, but where do you measure that against the reality? And I guess, where do we want to be is the question.
So only Mike, only 9% is really being diverted, right?
6%, so it's rounded up to 10.
Okay, 10%. And even though we, by our report to the state, is much greater, and that's what we use to measure our diversion rate, in fact, it's half of that.
Correct. When you calculate per the state calculation in the legislation, that's where they come up with 38%.
Great, thanks.
Mike, this is Harvey. So the state gets reports from commercial recyclers when it compiles the MRA report, correct? Those are numbers that, aren't in your control.
Correct.
But that gets counted as part of the MRA calculated percentage. So one of the things I guess I would have a question about is, should we, differentiate that in the report, versus what you actually are responsible for collecting and ultimately getting recycled. The other part of this, I see Sarah's question, is the residue from the MRF and the yard waste, I assume either goes to the Eastern landfill or shipped out or to Bresco, depending upon its location or, other factors.
Correct.
Kara had a second question. Is this by volume or by weight?
It's by weight.
Okay, thanks. And yeah, thank you for answering Sarah's question. I was also wondering that.
Other questions, comments, feedback with respect to the goals, but the goals that Jennifer presented, but also the charge of where we're trying to go, or any of the feedback that you all looked at in the briefing memo related to this goal setting.
So does the 38% that you referenced as being the Maryland Recycling Act number, is that also including the waste reduction credit?
That's who is speaking?
I'm sorry, this is Sarah Bixby.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sarah.
No worries.
It's good to see the whole panel and who's speaking. If you want to say who it is for the purpose of our recording too.
I will. So Sarah Bixby asking a question about whether the 38% that you referenced also includes I think it's a 5% waste reduction credit.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
I also see, Sarah, that you asked what happens to everything that isn't in the 9%. That is all disposed of.
So that's all contaminated?
No, by the nature of your question, if you put 100% of everything set out on the curb as residential garbage, we recover and go to market 9%. So the other 91% would be disposed of in some fashion.
Right, whether that's landfill or through Bresco.
Mike, can you clarify whether the residue is in the MRA number or not in the MRA number?
Trying to think of the right way to answer that. The MRA number, to me, is a legislated number by math. And my numbers are what actually happens. I'm trying to think of the tactful way of putting it.
So when you report to the state, do you tell them our recyclables are what we collect or what we market?
We tell, well, it's what commercial reports and what we report is residential. And I'll give you my favorite example is Washington County has incredibly high recycling rate because they get to count sawdust from all their sawmills. Baltimore County had an 80% recycling rate back when we could count slag from Sparrows Point. So you have to look at what all goes into that calculation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you brought that up, Mike. This is Kara. Yeah, because I'm comparing this to construction debris, and so construction debris, a lot of it has to be, lead, silver, like typical C&D waste is like 70+%, but it just depends on what's going into it. So I feel like a lot of our investigation in these conversations is going to come down to what we're collecting. So yeah, if we're looking at it by weight, and a lot of it's going to be contaminated with food waste, as much as the diagrams and the report showed that compost is like a really small volumetric piece of the current equation, that may be a good way to keep separated, because as much as we can keep them separated coming in, that's going to be important in terms of how we can volumetrically keep it marketable in the back end. Would be
well put. And the reason why I say that, very well put. The reason why I say that is our numbers are over what we control. And what we control and what we do primarily is residential curbside material for the great majority of what we do.
Yeah, so I'm looking, can folks see the chat as the chat's coming through? Okay.
Sarah's comment.
Mm-hmm.
It should, Chris has a comment. It should be also mentioned that construction and demolition waste is not in the MRA calculation. So that's a piece. And then Sarah, did you want to talk about your piece? That it makes a case for not using the number or percentage as a sole measure for success.
Yeah, so this is Sarah Bixby, and no, I'll just stand by what I wrote because I usually get in trouble if I try to add to it verbally.
Okay. Right, so programs in place on what is actually happening, what is essential to providing context to the numbers. That I agree with that. And again, everything that is placed in the chat, we're able to then take out and feed back to you all for your note for future reference. So thank you all, those who are putting your notes in the chat. We have the capacity to retain.
Mm-hmm.
If I could have one more question while we're on this topic, Jennifer, I don't know if maybe you know, but regionally, like if I know maybe these percentages are dependent on who puts what in the reports, but if you're saying that we're hitting 45% since 2015, like what's very progressive in the area? Did you mention in like the last meeting that Montgomery County had a progressive, like a more, like, do you know of anybody that's more 45? Like what's a good regional comparison right now in terms of what's realistic?
We were comparing some of the goals last time too with Montgomery County and Baltimore City setting either, zero waste goals or percentage number targets that way. The team can chime in too on this. I think that it's challenging. We tried to give you guys the benchmarking in section 7, some of the, comparative numbers there. So that might be the best place to look for some of the numbers. Harvey, do you want to say anything in particular there?
Well, Montgomery has Chaz, you can confirm the number, but I think it's in the mid to high 50s.
No, it's actually 41% real recycling. Then you add in 15% plus for the ash.
Okay.
So the recycling rate, you have to distinguish between the two.
Okay. So ash is from the waste energy plant, which is processed separately post the plant, I believe. But that tonnage, the MRA doesn't have ash as a material that's counted, I believe. That never got added. Is that right, Andrew? And Chaz?
This is Chris Skaggs, and I just wanted to mention for Montgomery County, they are allowed to count the ash as part of the MRA recycling rate, so their number is higher.
Okay.
As the county was going through their aiming for zero waste study, as Chaz mentioned, they definitely did a bifurcation looking at the recycling rate with and without ash. It's important as you're doing benchmarking to other jurisdictions that may not have the waste energy facility or may not count ash, that you look at them different. For example, I know Florida includes what goes into a waste energy plant as recycling in their recycling rate. So really, again, you have to look at what's counted, how it's counted, and why.
It would seem to me that counting recycling, per how it's counted now in Maryland is one thing, and then talking about diversion from landfill as another thing, because other processes, Bresco or some other conversion technology the county may consider, would consume the volume, reduce the weight, and reduce diversion from landfill and demand on ESL or transfer and disposal to some other out of county location. So I think it would be a good idea as we talk about the options in the future to think about recycling. In addition, also think about diversion from landfill as something that should be reported.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Any other?
It would be helpful, and maybe it is in the big document. I will be candid, I have not read every single page of the big document. To have a breakdown of the tonnage the county reports commercially and reports for residential to get to the, I believe Mike said it was 38%, what that breakdown is.
Yeah.
Maybe we could just take the page off of from the State Recycling Office website that lists all the counties.
Yeah.
And the numbers they submit. That'll give you Maryland in a nutshell, or a crab shell.
I don't think I saw this in the report. Do we have data, and this might be a Mike question, on like what our low hanging fruit is? Like what's our heaviest stuff going into these calculations that's not getting diverted or labeled?
The state did a waste characterization study, and Baltimore County locations were not part of that. So there is data from other locations. I think we could extrapolate pretty easily what the low-hanging, fruit is. Paper, plastics, food scraps are, probably the three biggest things. Much of which, well, the food scraps are in both residential, commercial. The
Right.
paper is probably more in the commercial than it is in the residential. But we don't know that based on county data. We don't have data to tell us that. We have, data from nearby locations. Baltimore City transfer station was sampled. I think Quarantine also. And then, Chris, you can mention some other locations, Montgomery, Howard, but not Baltimore County,
No.
unfortunately.
We do have that, Harvey. We had CSIR did a very in-depth waste characterization 4 years ago. I think it's actually in the website, but we can publish that for everybody. We'll refer to that.
And I see this, and I see this Sarah Bixby had a question about waste composition study. I know that I believe Baltimore City did their waste composition study. Jennifer, was that in the, Chris, was that in their report? I've read several of the reports and I can't remember. But yeah. I believe that, but have we, Mike, done a recent waste composition study?
Yes, it's 4 years old. We did it through the
It's
authority.
4 years old?
Yes.
Okay, well, at least that would be a baseline starting point of maybe something that we would need to look at.
Yeah, I think it's actually in the on the authority website.
Okay, well, maybe we should bring in our follow-up memo, colleagues. We can put that link after action. Put that link in there for you to look at what our study showed. But I do recall looking at Baltimore City.
Okay.
So are we ready to move on?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. And obviously this is a continuing discussion. Okay, so as we are thinking about this process of bringing ourselves along in a tactical plan development, and also at the same time, like Stacy said, we're flying the plane and writing the plan. We're wanting to give the group a way to think about the elements in the tactical plan as we move forward, and kind of breaking it down into some key questions that you can see here, that we don't have to answer these right now, but as a point of framework for thinking about the future sessions we're going to have together, and additional information that we want to be pulled in, like we're saying here about, weight of materials in the stream and what's available. We have broken out here 5 questions to think about in our tactical plan development. So first question, what can we divert? Okay, to the point of, as we were just saying, we have noted here, mixed waste, which ties into different processing that we're going to hear about during our sessions. Organics, mattresses has been a topic brought up, more household hazardous waste, other items. We spoke last week about the second question posed here. How do we change residential contracts or residential system in the short term, medium term, long term? Or do we?
That particular topic, we are going to have a breakout work group. Mr. Secretary, I want you to know that we acknowledge your thoughtful document. I spoke extensively with the county executive about concerns raised there, and it is our general belief, in order for us to sort out some of the various pieces to come back with a viable recommendation back to the full group, we're going to have to do a breakout on that group. And so we've talked to the team, the project team about that. So you all will be hearing about that. And if there's anyone else from the larger work group who wants to join the hauler representatives on that part, we welcome your engagement as well. But we have to sort through some pieces because that's definitely not a done deal.
Mhm.
Jennifer, is this Steve Lafferty? Isn't the question really, should we change the residential contracts, and if so, how?
Mhm.
I mean, this presumes that they have to be changed, and I'm not saying they shouldn't be, but
Mhm.
isn't the question whether they need to be based on what Mr. Singleton raised at the last meeting?
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yep. That's a good point.
And a part of that how, Steve, is the discussion that we want to have.
Mhm.
And that's why
Should
we're
we
going
change?
to have some additional, starting with that study from last year. And there was a question from someone either last meeting or since then that we received questions on about the study that was worked on last year. So I don't know if we brought final resolution to that, but we do have the study available and can share with this work group for the purposes of our decision making.
Mhm. Okay. Next question we're posing, what can we do with what's left? Listed here is landfill extension at Eastern Sanitary Landfill, transfer and disposal out of the county, mixed waste processing as an option, which we're going to hear about in sessions coming up, and waste energy Bresco. Now, these are again frameworks for you to think about, respond to, mull over. Next question is number 4. How do we?
Jennifer, before we leave that one, what we'd like to know is what's missing. The same kind of approach Mr. Lafferty just brought up about the way this is worded. Because the other thing is, right now we don't have residential contracts; we have residential agreements.
Mm-hmm.
But in this area, what can we do with what's left? If anyone has any ideas or any pieces that need to be put into that consideration, white papers, other ideas. For example, Lois sent their white paper, which again, we just got that today. We're going to send that out to you all. But we're looking for your thoughts about what else do we need to bring to the discussion table.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to mention that the T&D, transfer and disposal, can also mean rail haul transfer and disposal, not just truck haul transfer and disposal.
Okay.
If you're near a rail line, yes. I would ask the question, Jennifer, about the sequencing you have here. And I assume it was intentional. That it seems to me that if we're going to start with what can we divert, then the next question is what do we have left? And then how do we collect materials before we get to the issue of the contracts or the finances?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if there's a sequence in mind that you were looking at when you laid this out.
Yeah, they are, it's not necessarily sequential. I think we could have depicted them more interconnectedly here, but we could start with, and this is important as we start to bring out the menu of options as part of the tactical plan is, if we want to start with the question of how do we structure finances first and then bring down the options. I mean, I think it's a framework that we can definitely move the questions around for. So, and I think that what's not on here also is just a status quo, like to your point, Steve, about are we presuming that we're going to change, right? So we're envisioning that there is a status quo comparative point as we build the scenarios or the options, so we can know if there's basically no change, so we have something to compare to.
But I will say to Mr. Lafferty's point, Steve, we did revisit the sequencing of our meetings in terms of what we would have and when, because it makes sense to look at the array of options that have been put on the table thus far, which of course is not limited to those options. That's why we're asking for consideration of any other thoughts, white papers, considerations in terms of disposal, recycling, diversion, from you all that we can put into the mix. But we moved financing down. We moved financing further down. So I do believe that looking at the contracting piece and the financing piece as the ultimate, here are all the things that are out there. Now, how do we finance this? What does this cost? So if what I hear you all saying, do you want this to be reconfigured to show that sequencing? Because it wasn't intentional that financing is just plopped in there. We just know financing is a part of the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Colleagues, do you want this reconfigured to move the financing pieces down to the bottom?
I would say the financing pieces should go to the bottom, Madam Chair, only because I think we have to have a discussion about what we would recommend doing.
Right.
And I think if you talk about the cost ahead of time,
you have to have a
in the part
structure before you
the
can put a cost on it.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with
Exactly.
DeAndrea there.
Right. So why don't we, for the sake of just a flow, why don't we look at this, Jennifer? This was your thought. This was your way of just at least getting a vision on paper. It moved pieces. And again, for correctness, we would have to change that language. I agree with Mr. Lafferty, but the word contract is not accurate.
Okay. And then so moving contracts down with finances, how do we structure? And again, this is great because we want to basically boil some of what we're going to hear next in our sessions around these topics down into some categories, so we can start to try to have the framework to understand the options that we're facing and evaluating and understanding the impacts from. So I think this is good to get our own fingerprints on this framework. So in terms of structuring, if we move the contract or the agreements, what's now an agreement down, and again, all through this, I'm also saying that these are presuming some change, but we are planning to have a status quo, no change comparative point.
And I want to acknowledge Sarah's question, and maybe we need to look at this. How do each of the elements in the slide line up in this one align with the restated purpose? What our purpose as a work group is, and what our desired outcome is in terms of our deliverable. The other part is, how do we gauge vibrant and equitable within this, or within that, is what she says. The definition, what do we believe is vibrant and equitable? Which, so I know those words have come out of Sarah, just as a backdrop, have come out of our strategic plan, in terms of sustainability, vibrant communities, and then, equity in general. But I think our narrative in our product is going to have to address those pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So just for concurrence, excuse me, everyone is comfortable with the proposed shifts in just this visual that the team put together, GBB team put together, to try to give us a visualization of, our work and how it will help us to get to our decision making around recommendations.
I'm comfortable.
So we're moving the collect materials question up under the what can we divert question, and everything else moves down?
Actually, I thought that we're taking what is currently reflected as how do we change residential contracts, and how do we finance it and move it down.
Right.
Move those two pieces down below. How do we collect materials?
Mm-hmm.
How do we collect materials would end up under what do we do with what's left?
Mm-hmm.
This is Sarah Bixby.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I understand what you're doing, but I think what I was trying to say is these aren't what you have on your slide, Jen, aren't necessarily linear. I think some of these things need to happen in parallel rather than the linear approach, which I'm taking away from the actual conversation that you're having.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of where we brought the background memo to, with the building blocks we had so far for the solid waste management plan and the GBB team recommendations, wanting to bring this group a level of like how to think about the number of recommendations in larger groups of concepts, so we can start to bring them together. They're not discrete items as we kind of have them in these spots on the slide, but more elements to think about that we could put together to start to understand impacts and fiscal impacts. That's the intent, not that they're each discrete.
So Sarah, let me ask you a question. To get to your point, because I think this is a process of questions that leads to things. But to your point, can you describe a little more?
I'm sorry, Ms. Rogers, you froze up and I missed most of what you were asking.
I said to get to this is, I guess, more about process, what Jennifer and the team is reflecting here. But to get to your point, in terms of, if you can talk more about your vision of how we would go, because this is how we're going to approach the work meeting.
Yeah, I understand that. So a sustainable future, and I understand that may come out of your solid waste plan, but if you look at the items on the slide, how do we change residential contracts is an operating thing.
Right.
How do we structure finances is an operating thing, and it circles back around after you talk about some of the other stuff. How can we collect materials is an operating thing, and that may actually fall a little bit under a parallel discussion as well about what can we divert. But you know, and what can we do with what's left is a diversion thing. So, you know, I don't think they're all just linear in here. So, you know, what is going to, like I said, this is where I start to talk myself into problems. Down. But enhancing operations, okay. You know, residential contracts clearly enhanced operations. Reduced waste through a mix of recycling, composting, and other disposal diversion. Okay, what can we divert? Clearly that fits over into that, that flow of conversation. What do we do with what's left? That also fits into a reduced waste kind of flow of conversation.
So I get it. I get it now. So you're saying that, I guess, for this process piece, let's align it with what our goal and vision for our work is in that manner, how it aligns with those pieces. Now, the definitions of vibrant and equitable, that I think we have to work on, because that ties to a much bigger scheme of things as far as language from our strategic plan. When you said what you just said, I got it. I got what you were what Sarah meant. It would just be a realignment of these pieces, because these really just started out as questions, not you know, with the arrow kind of progression thing when we were talking about it. It's what we need to, some of the things we need to focus in on. But Sarah, what I hear you saying, try to bucketize them, if you will, under the statements of our goals. Am I getting the gist of what you're saying?
I think so. And you know, anytime I'm working on something, I always try to remember in my head what it is we're trying to achieve. What's the ultimate objective? And if the ultimate objective is, you know, sustainable future that's vibrant and equitable, and we want to do it by
enhancing operations,
yes,
reducing waste,
yes,
through a mix of recycling, composting, and disposal diversion efforts. That this is going to what I think Jennifer was trying to do, these discussions, and she just laid it out this way, will get us to recommendations that will do what our goal is. Because you asked the question, how do what's on this chart fit into that framework? Once you describe what that meant, that is what we're trying to do, is guide conversations that's going to lead us to recommendations on how we're going to enhance operations, recommendations on how we're going to reduce waste through, you know, different recycling options, composting, you know, and our whole diversion piece. That's just my response back to Sarah, but I think we can visually show that, so that as a part of our document could reflect that. I think we can get there.
Yeah. And what I'm imagining is we kind of keep working through this, and we come back to it each meeting. You know, we come back to the visualization of this, because maybe more like a hub and spoke is a better look at this than as we have it kind of sequentially.
So Sarah, what I would ask is, again, at the beginning of this, I said some things may have to happen outside of just our a meeting to try to put things together. Sarah, we engage with you, and then visualize it and lay it out in a way to the whole group.
Yeah.
Would that
Okay.
work for you, Sarah?
Is that good? Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna go.
Yeah, we need to, in being
let's-
good stewards of our time, we need to move.
Keep
forward.
going, yeah. So I'm just gonna lay out the prioritization path ahead that we have thought for this group, and please do chime in here, Stacy. We have our inputs as our building blocks here, the solid waste management plan, the GBB team, work group, and then the public, as we are using these building blocks to what we're envisioning for our February 18th meeting, which is also when you're going to have the feedback from the public survey. We're going to hear more about later. That we're going to do interactive poll tool through a word cloud tool on that meeting, and really kind of get interactive feedback on our meeting here together live. But again, we'll be preparing for that each one heading up to that.
And I think Sarah's point, I think we need to frame some of it around just those things. That was a very, very good point. Once I got it, I see it. We have to frame it around some of those pieces. Enhancing operations. How would this enhance operations? All of the things we've heard. Reducing waste, and looking at some of the ways we are all in agreement would be an innovative way to do that. And then our disposal options. You know, when we talk about landfill and otherwise, if we start when we get to our prioritization and the interactive poll that Sarah's talking about, is just going to allow us to all put our input on a topic in real time, and you'll see it on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
What everybody's position was on something. We're going to use technology, since, you know, in traditional formats, we would have had things on the wall that you put sticky notes on, but we had to figure out how to do that, you know, virtually and electronically.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I like Sarah, the more I think about it, I like what you're saying on how we can group this, or just keep us focused on our charge.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Colleagues, do you have other questions about this part? Because we have two other major segments we need to do tonight. But that was really good.
Question. Okay. Okay. So we are now moving then into the segment of the county strengths and weaknesses, and this is where we're going to tag team some of the presentation with myself and GBB here. So
hold on one second, Jennifer. Okay. Chaz, did you get a chance to make your comment? I'm sorry we missed your hand. Hand was raised.
Did he say?
Is he unmuted? Muted?
Oh, I think it's muted now, Chaz.
It's hard for me to see.
There.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, it keeps flipping back and forth. The question was answered.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, well, that was good. All right. Great. So are we okay now to go, Stacy?
Yes, I mean, unless there are any other questions, but I'd really like to move ahead so we have saved ample time for the survey discussion.
Okay. Okay. Harvey, go ahead.
All right, so I've got the first strengths and weaknesses slide, and this is sort of an overall comments. You've heard that the combined commercial and recycling rate as reported to MDE, compiled by MDE, is pretty high. So that's positive. There's a very convenient weekly single stream collection program that is out there with, it's without county provided carts, but there's still quite a bit of material that's collected and processed. The county has a variety of drop-off recycling opportunities, you know, in 3 locations. That's very good. provides a lot of access for people to bring stuff that could be collected curbside, but also they just decide they want to bring, and some, many materials that aren't collected curbside. There's very few complaints by the people that get the service, which they're happy, with the services they get. And that's a positive, as Mike has told us, very, very low complaint rates. On the minus side, the weakness side, we just talked about how low the residential recycling rate is, we think, when we just look at the residential recyclables. And if we look at what's marketed, versus what's collected. And that extends to the multifamily side as well. So the non-contract arrangements, they're agreements, but they're not contracts. And the haulers haven't, been compensated with regular increases. They are paid regularly from what I understand, but their rates are, as we would say, far under, what they need. We've heard that. We see that when we compare it to nearby jurisdictions. Overall, solid waste is funded through the general fund. Revenues that come in go into the general fund. The Bureau has to get in line with other departments for its funding, whether that's capital or operating. That gets in the way of them being able to do business in I'll say a more normal way, which is, passing along CPI increases to contractors and things like that. So that's a big weakness in our opinion, the way the Bureau is funded.
Okay, well, this is Steve Simmons. I'm going to did review the contracts that the county has, the major contracts. We didn't go to end every one, but we did review this list. So in the positive, you have the agreement with Bresco. Was just recently amended. It provides you with very reliable capacity, and it has a very attractive rate through 2026. So you have the ability to move waste into Bresco. You have contracts with out-of-state landfills for additional capacity, overflow capacity, and they're also at good, attractive, competitive rates in the marketplace. You have a good set of contracts with trucking companies to move material around within your system, from the transfer stations to the various disposal locations. And those contracts have quite a long life to them, and that they're at good market rate. So that's a very positive. You have a long-term contract with Hartford County to manage their waste at an attractive rate. So you've got extra waste coming into the system to help fund improvements. So again, a very positive event. And then finally, on your landfill gas system, you have a very innovative set of contracts where the gas that comes out of the Eastern Sanitary Landfill is converted to power and moved in and actually used by the county at county facilities. I've looked at a lot of these. This is a very innovative contract. It's got a long-term life out to 2045. So a very good asset there in the way that's securing both the management of the gas from the landfill, but getting it energy for use at county facilities. Couple of the drawbacks from the contract structure, it's a strength that you've got the volume from Hartford County. The flip side of that coin is now you've got an obligation to provide disposal capacity for Hartford County through 2034. So it's there, it's good today, but that is a long-term obligation now the county has. And that's kind of coupled with a little bit, the one out-of-state landfill contract with Republic Services does expire in 2024. It's a very attractive contract. You probably can roll it over at market rates again in 2024, but there's some risk around that, and what will market rates be in 2024? So that's kind of a synopsis of the major contracts that we reviewed. If you go on to the next slide, I'm going to do that for Dave.
Steve, before you leave that slide, can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
On the out-of-state landfill capacity, are there multiple contracts?
Yes, there are. You
Okay.
have contracts through Republic, through Waste Management, and then through your transporter. And your waste goes to landfills in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia. So there's a multiple of landfills used.
And I have a question as well, Steve, if I may, regarding Bresco. Your only reference really was the cost. What about the other implications of incineration, though?
You're right. My point was the cost. It's the incinerator is there. It's going to operate at its capacity as long as it's there. So in many ways, whether your waste is going into it or somebody else's is, the environmental externalities are going to be in the region. Did not mean to make it as a good or a bad. It's just it's an asset you have in managing your waste you have.
Okay, thank you.
And I would say, as a caveat to that, Mr. Lafferty, we have to also consider that this agreement that Bresco entered into with the city, which is a 10-year deal, but it also requires an investment of $40 million in improvements with respect to the incineration and the air quality and all of the EPA kinds of things. Even though from what I've read about the whole piece is that they currently meet the EPA standards, but in entering into this relationship again with the city, contract with the city, there's a commitment of $40 million in enhancements. So how that impacts us, we have a 5-year contract. We did not enter into a longer term contract. And we need to consider all pieces associated with it in our global scheme of things. But we were able to negotiate a competitive price when you compare their tonnage, their price per ton in the 10-year deal versus our price per ton.
I don't dispute anything that you just said, Madam AO. I'm just saying that the presentation was only about the cost factors, and there are environmental implications. The fact that the city has gotten a commitment of $40 million doesn't address the fact that we're continuing to put our refuge. And I'm not disputing that we had to enter into that agreement, that's not where we had to go. I'm just saying that there are always going to be questions about the relationship of incineration through other disposal methods. And so the fact that our contract looks good financially doesn't mean that we're not still contributing, because some of the, I think it's sulfur dioxide that's not really being captured still in all the $40 million that the city is, that Bresco is going to be investing to improve their facility. So that was my only point. So thank you.
All points well taken, Mr. Lafferty, because we do want to consider the environmental impact in all that we do. There are no dividing lines. There are no dividing lines from city, county in terms of air or anything else.
This is Harvey. This is Harvey. When we present Bresco as an alternative for diversion, we can present its environmental performance, currently, as well as what's projected with the $40 million investment, so that you have that information. The environmental friendliness or unfriendliness of Bresco is of differing opinion, depending upon who you talk to. So we can try to shed some light on that when we talk about it as a, as an option for the future. But it is beyond the, the 5-year look, if you will. But as you said, Stacy, we should be talking about things to think about beyond that in the plan.
The plan should
Bresco,
include.
And Bresco plans to be around for, at least 5 or 6 years beyond 2026 for the city agreement, and probably some more years beyond that.
And then the question, Harvey, is should the county continue to look at Bresco as one of its disposal methodologies? And we have to have a better understanding of the environmental implications.
Right. Exactly.
That's air drifts not only into Baltimore City, but to the residents of Baltimore County and Anne Arundel County and elsewhere.
Correct.
So if we're going to either discard that as an option or continue that as an option, it's more than just we're getting a good financial benefit from that. That's the point. Is it a sustainable element? Going back to Sarah's commentary, is it a sustainable element of our future disposal methods?
Right.
Just as a footnote to that, one of the reasons we included, alternative fuels for collection trucks and transfer vehicles is that some of them will be going, to Bresco, and that you would have less of an impact on the environment as those trucks travel if they're using CNG or electric versus diesel. Just that's a sort of a secondary consideration, but that's part of the thought process behind, a different fuel for vehicles.
But Mr. Lafferty's points are well taken. We always have to go back and think about the sustainability part, not just financial sustainability, but in terms of the environmental piece. And we definitely asked Mr. Lafferty to always keep that lens on so that we do have that discussion. I do want to address one piece from Mr. Good, and then we need to move on. Mr. Good, you asked Steve the question, but in that this was something that we had to negotiate internally. I'll just say the price that the rate, when we define good rate, our rate starting out with this new contract was less than our original rate, and that the escalation of the rate, even in the 5 years, does not get us back to where we were in the original contract. So that's in terms of why we say competitive. And of course, our rate is less than what their new contract with the city is. That was a part of the negotiation. The second part, you asked the question, is the county comfortable with making the goal based on our projections and based on all of the negotiations that went on with that contract? We do believe we can meet the goal. And Mike is concurring that we do.
Thank you for that, Stacy. But now Steve said favorable. So when somebody say favorable, I'm like, what are you favoring it as? To what? He used favorable.
Just that it would, the rates were certainly within the marketplace, or slightly below what the marketplace is for comparable disposal in Central Maryland. So that's why I wasn't trying to, just, it's certainly not above market. You've got a good market rate. It's costing you less for a T&D there than likely going out to Republic Landfill in Pennsylvania.
I don't know. Okay, we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, well, we do need to move
Let's
on,
go.
but that is a big piece. And Steve, I'm glad you're holding us accountable as you and I discussed on the sustainability part, and ties back to to Sarah's part about vibrant. We have these pieces in here, so we do have to overlay that part as we think about our recommendations. But we do need to move on. We have a few more pieces of the strengths and weaknesses. Then we need time to discuss the survey. So I'd like to move on.
Sure. Dave is not with us tonight. I'm going to present his slide, on the financials. Certainly you have, as the department financials, you have a very low overhead rate. It might be too low. You have, positions that aren't filled. You've got things internally you haven't been able to do because of lack of funding. So it's great if you're a taxpayer in Baltimore County. There's not been a lot spent, but it may not be sustainable. In looking at the overall thing, because you don't really, like many municipalities, you don't have a total cost of services budget. So you don't really have a total true cost. So there's cost components related to solid waste or the overhead that are over in other department budgets. And one of the bigger ones is, the department itself is not in control of its capital project financing. It's a part of the overall accounting. You'll see later in the series of meetings we talk about, enterprise funds. Sometimes they're set up differently on that. So go to the next slide, Jen.
And I'll acknowledge that Mr. Adams asked a number of questions. Mr. Adams, we will follow up with the summary document to get to some of what you asked, but for the sake of time and the rest of the slides, we will definitely acknowledge we have that information.
Good evening, Sam Lybrand. Should I go, Jennifer?
Yeah,
okay.
please.
The transfer stations, they're well managed, good management team, well designed, efficiently operated, provide a lot of redundancy to the county and where they're located. Good access roads, you can get in and out without major traffic issues. Good locations, as I said before, to provide redundancy to the county. And they're serviced by a high quality long haul transportation company that I'm familiar with. Some of the negatives, the Western Acceptance Facility is located in a floodplain. It's subject to frequent flooding. That is not recommended for a solid waste disposal facility or recycling facility of any sort. The Western Acceptance Facility actually uses old, pre-worn compactor units to move single stream recyclables to the different material recovery facilities that are utilized, and yard waste to the yard waste recycling location. These units can usually have a limited life. You can repair them for a while, but after a little while, they're going to probably give up the ghost on you. So that's kind of my positive and negative analysis of your transfer station.
Or strengths and weakness.
Yes, except for the Western Acceptance Facility being in the floodplain. That's a serious matter.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's a weakness. But quick question, can you go back 1 minute, Jennifer? This is a question, we don't have to answer it now, but Mike, how old are the compactor units at the Western facilities? We can put that in the feedback. As a matter of fact, I'll put it in the chat so that you can answer that.
Original units from 1972.
Okay.
Okay. The drop-off locations, they're well managed also. They're laid out well. You separate your residential and truck traffic as early as they can be separated for safety reasons. Give a high level of service to the residents in Baltimore County and accept multiple materials. Those are all positives for the way the drop-offs service the county. That's some of the negatives. They require continued management and oversight to make sure the right materials go into the right places. They collect 60,000 tons a year of waste. That equals a significant amount of transportation and or disposal expense for the county to bear. Once again, Western Acceptance Facility is in a floodplain and subject to frequent flooding, which is not optimal. Some of the signage at all the facilities could be somewhat improved. It's there, it's present, but it could probably be improved somewhat. The collection system that you have for solid waste and recyclables in the county, we've already touched on it in a couple different ways in prior slides. Once again, the management oversight is good, although a little thin. The team seems to be working hard to keep it going. That's just my opinion. There's a lot of resilience under working under challenging conditions, such as one of the haulers passed away several weeks ago, and the management team had to scramble to get things on pace. Towards local collection companies, that is good, supporting your local businesses. Low cost for residents in the way of service price. Pretty low cost, pretty high level of service. And you have a long-term commitment from the hauler group that is currently servicing the county. Some of the negatives, the below market compensation to the haulers, as we've touched on prior. Some of the truck performance and reliability is not the best due to the age of the fleet. You have an inconsistent cart system. Everybody's got different carts. This kind of limits your ability to go to automated or semi-automated technology for collection. You have the technology, once again, is limited as far as routing that you're familiar with. And also, once again, you don't have the option for automated, semi-automated collection systems. The route sizes may be inefficient for some of the haulers and could be better improved. There's a limited equipment investment by the haulers since they don't have long-term contracts to support that can be supported for financing. There's no consistent messaging on the different collection vehicles that represent the county. And oversight and enforcement takes a lot of time and effort on Mike's team. Service delivery is at risk due to lack of formal agreements being in place. You do not have any curbside household hazardous waste and bulky collections. Those are some of the negatives. I think the next slide is any questions?
Can I ask a question? This is Izzy Patoka. Could we go back to the last slide? So on the collection side, on areas for improvement, that's a lot of areas, and it kind of makes me believe that Baltimore County, in kind of our overall scheme of what we invest in, we're obligated. It's a systemic issue. We're obligated to invest 51% of every tax dollar approximately into education, and then the other 49% or so does all the other things, funds a police department, does roads, picks up trash, does all the other things that are the nuts and bolts of good government. And it seems like all of these items in the areas for improvement, or what did you call it, Stacy? Strengths and weaknesses. Yeah, so the weaknesses are, it feels like there's a systemic issue of lack of investment by a large county of almost 900,000 people to have so many of these areas of weakness on a basic government function. It almost feels to me like the investment, it's kind of like we're, in terms of solid waste removal, it's like we would do our grocery shopping at a discount at a Dollar General store, and that way you're not really getting any nutrition in your body and you're not really doing it well. And for solid waste collection, I feel like we in Baltimore County have a systemic problem of not making a proper investment in solid waste. Now, I know that this administration's only been in place for 2 years, and the systemic problem predates that lack of an investment in something that is a basic function of local government. And I think it's something that the report should, or that we want to make that statement, I believe, loud and clear, that there's just a lack of investment in a basic nuts and bolts function of government in this area.
This, Steve
So
Lafferty,
noted, Councilmember Patoka, so noted. This is an observation we share.
Yeah.
A question, Mr. Librand. If in fact one of the collection challenges is the need for technology and consistency in the cart system, doesn't that also mean that whomever is the hauler has to have a different model of vehicle? If we're going to have carts that are picked up automatically, then the vehicles themselves have to accommodate that, which also means perhaps fewer employees or a different way of employees being deployed. So the technology applies to the vehicles that have to be utilized for the pickup itself, right?
Yes, primarily, sir.
When you say primarily?
Well, technology can also apply to some of the systems that are on board the truck, such as telematics and routing systems, GPS. But primarily, yes, automated and semi-automated service.
And so I think these are some of the pieces that, in looking at our collection system in general, that goes along with the compensation, goes along with the technology, talking with the hauler community about how do we work together to take steps over the next 5 years to move toward some of the industry innovation that's out there, and what kind of investment, again, back to Councilman Patoka's statement, what kind of investment would we need to make in cooperation with the haulers? You know, what kind of financing partnerships? I mean, different things that we've never thought about. We just kind of have just kept going along, but that's where we're looking to this work, as I said, Mr. Singletary, talking about the what ifs and then how much it will cost with you all, not making unilateral decisions about it. These discussions need to help us understand what's available, and then how would we get there? What is the vision for getting there?
Okay.
Some of these pieces we want to pull out into the continued discussion in terms of residential collection, as well as a sub piece of that is compensation. But we need to talk about the whole piece. And again, I'm looking to our colleagues from the hauler community, those who worked also last fall with us, and then members of this group that could be a part of that discussion so we can talk about these pieces. And Mr. Singletary, you've played a leadership role in the past, and I hope that you will continue to want to do that and help us have the comprehensive discussion that we need to have so that we can, you know, articulate the financial investment that's needed. I think you're on mute.
Sorry. I totally support what you're commenting on. Reflecting back on my discussion last week where I talked about, you know, minimum wages going up and what our costs have gone up. I've shared costs over the past 10 or 15 years with the county. they've been receptive to get the costs. It's just that's never translated into additional revenues for us in the form of raises. I don't know if the committee's aware of what Baltimore City just recently did. I kind of assumed that people knew this when I was talking at the last meeting, but Baltimore City has stepped up to the plate pretty big time with respect to sanitation workers and how they're paid. The city gave them a $5+ an hour raise to the laborers that work on the back of the truck, and their pay rate's now 16+ an hour, and they're getting health benefits. I think that's great. They raised the cost of their drivers $4,000 to $5,000. Again, that's great. I would love to be able to do that. I do that on the commercial side of my business because I've got the revenue to support that. I can't do that on the residential side of my business because I'm not getting paid enough money to do that.
And I definitely was aware of that because it's been brought to us by other haulers. And like I said, the city's move, we applaud the city's move for doing so. And that's why we're here at the table, again, like I said, trying to make the case for the investments that need to be made, particularly on the collection side. And I think, Councilmember Patoka, your observations are well taken. And looking at the historical investment in this particular part of the operation, the investment has not been made. And that's just factual from the standpoint of looking at where we are as Baltimore County, what has it been invested, and what's happening around us.
Mhm.
So we're definitely going to have the sub breakout, and anyone who wants to join us, please email. We have a new email address. Savitra, would you like to put the email address in the chat, please? So people there, and then we'll put it in the follow-up email as well. Please let us know if you want to join that subgroup as well, just have some further conversations about this piece.
Okay.
Okay. I think this is the last segment on the strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah. So this is a section of it working on with Paige Davis at GBB, looking at the county's outreach and education. We assessed a strength with the informative website and multiple tools used on the website for interaction with residents. We noted some weaknesses with language translation, being in English, not having information on products made from recyclable materials, and also just clarification on plastics accepted in the program. And some of this is also reflected in the background memo. And really, all the pieces here tonight are pulled from the background memo to kind of give you the high level look from those sections. Harvey? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Hi, I'm reporting for Brad Kelly. Brad did an evaluation of the county's MRF back in 2017, so he had in his mind, what he saw 3 years ago versus what he saw, this go around. So he noted that there was significantly improved cleanliness and maintenance. The system is operating well. The team is keeping up with the maintenance and is performing necessary major refurbishing as it goes along. The team there prides itself on producing very, very clean commodity bales, which they're able to sell, consistently in the marketplace. They're selling about 54% of what comes in the front door. This is the numbers before glass. Mike, I don't know the numbers after glass. Maybe it's another 10% or so, but as an industry standard, single stream MRFs generally can ship out 70 to 75%. But the quality of the bales in today's marketplace need to be as clean as possible. So there's a balance there. The parts in inventory are well organized. Brad tells me he uses Baltimore County's as an example of how other MRFs should keep their parts and inventory documented. And he was happy to see that glass is being recovered again. On the weakness side, it's an old facility and it's a small facility. Things are tight. There's no room to expand or upgrade as you're operating. The loading dock area is too small, and you got to be very careful if you're bringing people around, into the facility to show them, because the bales are stacked pretty high, and it's not well lit. The inventory software and county software are not compatible, causing some extra work to enter the data so the county has it as well as the MRF is doing it. The value of the recyclables is, very, very volatile. I think you may notice in the review of the financials how the value of the recyclables has gone down significantly. This is true, in every MRF, but it's something that, creates financial pressure on the Bureau's budget. If you go from, 5 or 6 million a year down to 2 million a year, where's that 3 million come from? Something has to give in the county general fund budgeting process. I talked about the low recovery rate already. The facility doesn't lend itself to be used for public education. What we mean there is it would be nice to be able to drive a school bus full of kids up to the facility, walk them into an education center, have them walk around safely in a viewing gallery so they can learn about, what happens to the stuff they set out at home or at school. This is something that if there's a new MRF in the county's future, would be great and important to have to reinforce the importance of recycling. There is an issue with the electric pallet jack for the inventory seems to need to be replaced immediately. So that was something Brad wanted me to also mention. That's all, Jennifer.
Hi, so Steve, again, I'm going to present for Corinne, who did the review of the organics facility, but I was there with her on the day we went through it. On the positives of the organics system, you have yard material collection. You offer your residents free compost and mulch. That's a nice amenity for the citizens. And you do accept bulky yard materials at the Eastern Sanitary Landfill. But there are several negatives to the system. And in going to there, actually, I'm going to jump to the bottom bullet because I think it's one of the more important ones, and one I know causes Mike problems there, in that you collect, or you allow collection, and you allow the residents to put their yard waste in plastic bags. And I know the reasons why that. It has, again, tying into the collection and the frequency of service and paper bags and all. There's a reason why it's done, but that does create a lot of problems with the management of the organics, because now you've got all that plastic in the compost and the mulch that you're trying to produce, and it really renders it a non-economic product. You give it away for free because it's really got no value. It couldn't go to the commercial market. So that's one of the weaknesses in the tie-in between collection and your facilities. So then going back up to the top, you know, you can handle a large volume. You've got some space out at Eastern Sanitary Landfill, but it's pretty used. The lack of enforcement ability on collection at the curb versus commercials. You're missing an opportunities to expand your feedstock, and you're missing revenue opportunities because you don't have really a marketable product when it's done. And then finally, you know, you're not taking in food scrap, so that's your organics management program right now is not, as it's configured now, is not really much of a viable alternative for managing food waste. Going to the next then. Talking about the Eastern Sanitary Landfill, positives, it's a good site, it's fully compliant, you're maximizing the capacity. And its capacity gives you planning and assurance for the next few years. It's a very well-run facility. Some of the negatives towards it is the permitted capacity is ending. You don't have much life left there. Probably going to have problems with expansion. There's a lot of residential development around there. So you could look, you know, you should expect some opposition to expanding either vertically or horizontally. And there's no alternative site yet identified. When that site fills, you know, is there another space available in the county for a landfill? So I think with that, we were going to stop and take questions.
We've got a lot of pieces in the chat, which I think we're going to have to answer like we did last session in order for us to get to this last part. But it's about most of this about economic recovery, investment. Yes, Sarah, lack of investment.
Mm-hmm.
And we recognize we're going to have to go back to the general fund or look at options to do it. We did do a bond. We did a referendum on spending. So there are some money that will be made available this coming year, but we have to look closely at what that money can specifically be used for. But you're right. We have a need for investment. So in being good stewards of our time, we really do want to get to this last segment with you all because we need to talk about the survey. The team is working on the survey, and we just need you to at least know what's happening, and then looking later we will send out the questions, but we needed to let you know because in the plan right now is that the survey is both a residential and a commercial survey, and the plan is to promote the survey. It's online, and it will be out for a month, but we need to get the feedback in order to have that be a part of our decision making as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer to talk about the plan and the strategy for moving forward.
Yeah, thank you, Stacy. So we are building from the phone survey in this effort that was part of the solid waste management plan, and this survey is not a phone survey. We're planning an online digital survey. And again, as Stacy noted, for both residents and businesses, the plan is that it is going to be open from the beginning of January to the beginning of February, January 5th to February 7th. So we can bring back the report to you at your February 18th meeting. And again, we're on a condensed timeline trying to meet all the needs. So when you get the PowerPoint from this meeting tonight, you're going to have the survey links in it, but we're going to share some of what it looks like now. Just to give you
Let me ask you a question, Jennifer. If it's in the PowerPoint, And then PowerPoint is PDF. Are they going to be able to click on it, or we're going to
Yeah,
drop them
they'll
in
be, I can put them in the email too, but they'll be clickable from the PDF.
Okay, I just
Yeah.
wanted to be sure, because sometimes in the PDF, you can't click on things.
Should be, and if not, I can put it in the email though too, just to make sure. So when we looked at the phone survey, we noted two things that I wanted to highlight for the group, that there was more representation of residents over age 61 in the phone survey, likely because it was a phone survey based on home phone surveys, home phone numbers, and also that there were also more homeowners in the phone survey than are in the population. So these two notations of the demographics of the phone survey is what we're taking into account as we're developing the new online survey and advertising through the county communications. We've already had organizing meetings around this and trying to deploy and model some of the successful school surveys and other models that have gone out through the county to really reach a diverse audience. The two links are here. These are just the draft test environments for you all. So there will, once they're finalized, once they're finalized, trying to go to the link. Once they're finalized and they go live, they'll be from the accessible from a page on the county site where you can choose the residential or business. Oh, nope, yeah, I was trying to load the survey. Sorry about that. So they, once we finalize the questions with you all, which we will do by our next meeting, so you'll have time between now and the next meeting to review. So the online digital survey questions for residences, the top two we have as they're in blue because they're demographic questions. About age and are you a resident, which are both, you need to be over 18 and you have to be a resident to take the survey. So if it's not, then you get kicked out of the survey. We ask a zip code question because we want to be able to present to you all the council districts and the locations within the county when we get the results. We also are going to be asking questions about what services you use most often for trash disposal and recyclables in there, meaning curbside or drop off. We're going to ask questions about the use of rolling carts and also for yard materials. How do you rate satisfaction with your current services? And then we ask, you can see here question 10, when we were talking about a world-class system, as we've been charged with from the county executive, what does that mean to you? What are the most important elements? And you'll see that's a selection. Also about collection schedules and some of the hot topics that we know are part of discussion within this group, same-day collection, kinds of containers. And we also have an open-ended question about suggestions or comments overall. So just to give you a sense of what this looks like, this is the opening page, a few select survey screenshots. It should take about 10 to 15 minutes to complete. We do direct people back to this group's web page and also noting when we're going to be doing the presentation of the results onto the February 18th meeting. This is a view of a few of the questions. You can see this is using, it's called Question Pro, and it's easy, interactive with either radio buttons or check marks. Most of them are, some of them are select one, some select all that apply. Another look here, we are asking about phrasing. You're going to see phrasing around, for example, food scraps collection or rolling carts, and asking if they would be willing to pay a fee for it. Not naming a number, but just finding both interest and willingness to pay for some of these additional services. This was the world class question that I just mentioned, and you can select all that apply in this area. So again, we're looking for your feedback. You can take these surveys now when you get the links as many times as you want as a resident or business. So you can kind of click through if you'd like again, but these are not ready for public use yet. We are just taking your input at this point. It's a test environment.
Yeah, it's going into a test site. If you take it just for ease of use, it's the data will go into a test site. We still have some final vetting to do, but what we're asking you guys to do is take a look and see if there are any words or any questions, if you will. We don't want it to be too long, but we're trying to see if there are any things we're missing, particularly this is the residential one. There's a commercial one as well.
Yeah, and this is the business survey. And again, we ask in this one about size of business and the type of business using the NAICS code you'll see in there. But we recognize that the people, business owners in the county are often people in the county too. So we might have the same person taking the survey from two different perspectives. I'm not going to go through let me see if there's anything in here I can just look at quick. When do you need a response? We want to have prior to our next meeting, Chaz. So we're asking for comments between now, as soon as we can get them, but we want to have the questions finalized following the next meeting.
Right, and then we have a meeting coming up with our communications folks here within the government. So that's why I'm trying to get we're trying to get your input as well, so that we can get it all cleaned up and ready to begin to promote. And that's where we're asking you all as well, through your respective organizations. We're going to do promotion, and Councilmember Patoka, you know, I always keep up with everything through your promotion, but we want to get this far and wide as we can. Jennifer, I did have one question. Are we doing a Spanish version?
That's a good question. We do not, you know, going along with what I was mentioning today with all languages, we can prepare that.
Okay, let us know if you need some translation assistance, because we do have in HHS, we have some translation staff who do translations. But I'm just, what do you all think about that, offering at least at minimum in Spanish? Councilmember Patoka, what do you think?
Yeah, he said yes, our office can help with that.
Yes, I absolutely think we should. We have a large undercount, as you know, Stacy. I'm sorry, Administrator Rogers. We have a large undercounted Hispanic population, and I think if we can give them, you know, have some of their concerns relayed to us, it would be very helpful.
I see you put that in. Yeah. I wasn't looking at the chat, but that was in my mind. Everyone else, I think Jennifer answered the other questions about the survey in terms of when. As soon as you can. Jennifer's going to send everything out tonight, so you all have the PowerPoints, and that's going to be our routine. That Jennifer will send out the PowerPoints, and any other follow-up memo or things that need to come from us that could take a day or so, we will send you. We don't want to bombard you, but in order for us to keep up with the time frames on things, sometimes we have to send it out. The responses to the questions we'll do like we did the last meeting. We'll get responses in and write them up and then send them out to the group.
Yeah.
What are the languages that are spoken with the greater frequency? What does the Baltimore County Public Schools enrollment reflect as far as other languages? Steve, we can look at that. I know that Spanish by far is the most prevailing, just from my work from Social Security. But we'll see what the other percentages are. But in terms of how we present multiple ones, we have to think about that. Language access was a big part of my former roles, so I am sensitive to that as well. But we'll have to look and see.
Mm-hmm. And I saw Councilmember Patoka, your question about pushing it out. Yes, definitely. Once they're ready, which we're gonna have a soft launch right after New Year's, so it'll be ready for the 5th of January. So yes, we want this group to share with your networks, and it's good. And we have that coordination underway with county communications.
And Jennifer, can you? This number is like slipping out of my head, but I know we talked about what is our target in terms of response rate that we're looking for.
Yeah, we had we are aiming around 800 to 800 would be our minimum, but we would like to be maybe closer to 1,500, 2,000.
Because that's the average representative sample for
significance for the size population.
Right. The statistically significant for our population. We need at least that to reach statistical significance.
Question on that. So if we have a really extensive social media and email network, and if we push it out, do we skew it to second district? I mean, our network goes beyond the second district, but it primarily is the second district. Do we then skew the data to be more reflective of second district? So if, let's say you're looking for 800 responses and 400 are from the second district, does that skew the data?
Well, Councilmember Toka, one of the things that I would ask that you consider doing on behalf of the group, since you're a part of the work group, is talking with your colleagues about their network. I know Councilmember Jones has a network too, and just about everybody, if they would send it through their same kind of network, they I'm sure will support you. I'm happy to talk with them as well, but getting representation and using all the channels that we can, I think, is what's important here.
Okay, good idea.
Thank you.
Well, I know
this is a look. I think we're at the end, right, Stacey? There's a couple different types of questions, so you'll see. And this is it. This is my last slide, just to say we did reorganize the future session speakers a little bit and moved the system revenue one down to February 4th. So the next session is going to be about best practices.
We have one question that Mr. Adams put in, a business survey. They're mostly hired privately. Will you want to raise an expectation? Well, Mr. Adams, I think it's about, more than just the collection part. It's about the recycling piece and how we might be able to partner more with businesses on certain recycling. So I don't think it raises expectations on collection, but I think we need to be able to know their position on engaging in collections, especially around food scraps and some other things that we don't do right now. Also, the other part of that, one of the presentations that we have lined up is about mattress recycling, something I never even thought about, the volume of mattresses in jurisdictions where have lots of hotels and things, because they have a cycle that they have to recycle mattresses. I was like, wow, I never even thought about that. So many little pieces to this, but I hope that kind of gets to why we need to do commercial as well.
Okay. And then I know we're at a few past. I did want to say I put up here also, so you'll have this, it's in the chat too, but that's the dedicated email address at the bottom for this group. So using that as opposed to the previous email would be great, so we can keep track of comments as they might come in. And I think
And like I said, that comes into the solid waste work group at Baltimore County MD.gov. We will indeed share with the team, with the project team. We just brought it and thought it was better to just bring them into the government.
And
okay, I know we had a lot of questions that we did not get to, but we will. But back to the survey, Jennifer, when you send out the slide deck tonight or tomorrow morning or whenever you're going to do it, can you put in the information about when to respond back to the survey?
Yes.
And if you're in the business community side, please look at both of them. Or everybody can look at both of them as your time avails, because we really want to make sure we're good. And Mr. Lafferty, we will get back to you on the data about the languages.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, I know that was a lot. Lot being
Thank you, everybody.
out. We want to thank you. And we'll definitely be in touch.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Right. Thank you. Thank you,
Good night, everyone. Be
Good night.
safe.
Harvey. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.